All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. My name is Amanda Vinnett-Knoll. I host the Activist Hour webinar series with 92 County Strategy. For those of you not familiar with 92 County Strategy, we advocate for progress through civic education. So we try to do seminars to give people information that they may need. You know, we don't want people to have barriers that prevent them from getting information they need to make progress in their community. So we try to fill that gap at no cost to the communities in our state. We do encourage political involvement for progressive activists, and we are completely volunteers from across the state of Indiana, and we put our time and dedication into this to try and make sure we're getting everybody exactly what they need so they can feel successful when they go to make an attempt to run for office or be a part of their community or get something accomplished. So the Activist Hour webinars, this is the first thing we've done with our organization, trying to feel it out, see what people are trying to learn about, and then give them that information. So again, they're free of charge, very full of information, and you can access them on our website at in92.org. Tonight, the title of our webinar series is Shattering the Glass, Women in Politics. And we have a guest panelist tonight, and it is the one and only Christina Hale. Christina was the former lieutenant governor candidate. She has also been a state representative, and she's a very wonderful person. I was lucky enough to meet her last year, and one of the very first things I ever noticed was that she wears sneakers to go everywhere. And I love that because I'm a sneaker person, and I don't care how cute your pumps look. Just like you said, I can knock on more doors in sneakers than I can in pumps. So I absolutely love that line of thinking, and I fell in love with you that day. So I'm really, really proud to have you here and very honored that you are donating your time with us. So thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my great pleasure, and I thank you for what you're doing, getting the word out and raising really important conversations that otherwise wouldn't be happening.
That's exactly right. It's all about the conversation. You know, when I started organizing, there were a lot of questions I had that it was kind of like you just kind of jump into this pond and you flounder and you don't really know a lot. So trying to fill that gap of knowledge and really give that back to people, give back what you learned and help elevate everybody together. I think it's so important, and you were the perfect person to have on here tonight. You know, I had people come to me and say, shattering the glass, what are you talking about? We have women in politics. We have female legislators. And I said, you know what? Females in Indiana represent over half of our state population, but only 19% of our state legislature. So we still have a lot of glass left to shatter.
We sure do. And the only thing I want to say is I want to challenge a word you used, which is flounder. I don't think we're floundering. I think when people start engaging in these kinds of issues, and instead of just being on the sidelines, but start participating and listening and getting involved, I think of that more like a process of discovery. And discovery can be sloppy and messy, and you know, a lot of times we feel like fraud, like who in the hell am I to have an opinion or to think this way, you know? But you're somebody. We're all somebody, and we all have a unique point of view to contribute. And I think of it more like a contribution to that discovery process.
Oh, you know what? That is a really great way to look at it. Unfortunately, when I was looking for all those answers, I didn't see it that way. But looking back, that actually is a really great way to look at it. I appreciate that.
And shame on us, all of us, where, you know, we think of ourselves, you know, so many women in particular suffer from imposter syndrome, or we feel like frauds, or, you know, it's like, who am I to run for office? Who am I to, you know, make that decision? No, it's exactly it. That's who you are. It's because you might not be the prettiest, smartest, most athletic, most studied, most credentialed. You've walked in your shoes. You know what's in your heart, and you're in it for the right reasons. And that's why you're participating. And I think when you're engaged in these kinds of conversations, it's because it's not about you. It's about doing this for your community, whether that's locally, your neighborhood, your school board, the state, the country. So I just think it's really important, and I thank you.
Well, that's something that I feel consistently is you don't feel like you have a right to an opinion. You almost feel like you never know enough to feel like you have two legs to stand on.
And that's the thing. Nobody ever knows enough. My first job, I was a reporter, well, after babysitting and, working retail as a kid. My first job was as a newspaper reporter for a small paper in Northwest Indiana, and that's where I had this moment where I discovered, like, oh, shit, I thought the adults were in charge and knew what they were doing, and they were making decisions, based on the right reasons and evidence and research. I was covering county commissioners meetings and city council meetings, and you think, wow, I thought everyone had it together. I went to work at the state level, same sort of experience, and I really believe that human beings are winging it more often than not. And thank goodness for the bridge builders and, the mechanics and people that, have these precise skills and expertise and brains that can process things in that way. But that's not really how we do it all the time in government. Sometimes, we're doing it from a perspective, from some research, but you can't 360 every decision that comes across your desk and have a perfectly researched answer when you have to vote on something in 15 minutes. And they just put it in your hand and read it the first time, or, or you name it. And so I say, shame on us. We don't have time to be perfect anymore. We can just strive to be our best and to do good, to do the best good we possibly can.
Exactly. Perfect. That's exactly it. Okay, so I do have some questions that people have submitted and things that they kind of wanted you to touch on. So if that's okay, I'd like to kind of start the Q&A session with you, and then we do have a live question and answer part at the end. So if someone has questions during the meeting, you can drop them in the chat box online, and I will get to those during the question period. So the first thing I would like to know, because I know you're a mother, right?
I am.
So what is it like campaigning with a child?
Well, I was a very young mother. My life went kind of off the grid in the sense, like it did not go to plan. So when I first campaigned, my son was pretty old. He was certainly self-sufficient, and I think of him now as a young man, not a kid. So I wasn't campaigning with some little kid. He was campaigning for me. So I had like the really amazing experience of watching my son knock on doors and tell my story, and answer questions on my behalf from a more adult point of view. And, he lived it through me when I was struggling to put myself through school and pay for daycare, or, I remember bouncing a check when I bought him a Star Wars comforter, back in the day. And, but he was part of all that journey. And, I think he really could see what was in my heart and why I wanted to serve. And so it was a great experience because he could go out and reflect that. And actually just, I guess it was 2 years ago, I was away doing some work and I couldn't be there for a rally to talk about women's rights, and he stood up there and did it for me, talking about why we needed to repeal a tampon tax and a diaper tax. And it was one of the it was just such a touching moment for me as a mom, that know that he's seen me at my lowest points when I've struggled, and then he's really been able to bear witness to other people that I want to see our community do things better for others, so their pathway to success is a little bit easier than I had it.
You brought tears to my eyes over here. Because that's the struggle that I think a lot of women nowadays, especially the younger generation, can really identify with. They know what it's like to struggle like that and try to get by and have their kids see them in that. And that is a really great, rather than, mine are younger. So my youngest is 5 and my oldest is 13. So for me, doing a lot of this is difficult because I do have to find the child care and everything to do my activist life. So it's the same kind of thing. They've seen me struggle, and now they see the desire, the way you said that, the desire to serve, the commitment to serve, the call to serve even, and they see that, and it's starting to show up in them. I see them teaching each other and them showing it to other people, and I can't wait until they're older like your son and I get to see that start to come full circle. That's going to be so neat.
Well, yeah, and because you're living your values right now. So how much easier would it be for you to be sitting on the couch right now, just like, vegging out, watching House Hunters or whatever, like recharging your batteries for that next day, and you've got multiple kids, and you're probably doing that multiple kid hustle. And how many of us had to get to daycare by 6, or they charge you $20 a minute for every minute you're late, and the stressors, and then you have those questions like, okay, do I give them the boxed macaroni and cheese, and I'll throw a bag of salad together and call it a day, but I got to do my show. And
right. I mean, I shoved hamburgers down their throat.
Yeah. And
that everybody has to be out by 9.
Yeah. Is that the right choice? Am I being a lousy mom because I'm kind of privileging my greater project to be a community activist over that? And I would say no. I mean, everybody finds their own balance, and you don't know, at some point what you're doing right now, they're going to remember, my mom. They're going to tell the story. My mom would come home, she'd do the show on the internet, and talk about it because, she was, she wanted to make things better for people. And, they might not quite get the nuance of every conversation right now at 5 years old, but they know that you are living your values. And I think
they definitely do.
Yeah.
That's definitely a struggle, that balance that you were talking about, and feeling, some days you feel kind of like a lousy mom, and then you're like, you know what, part of my job as a mom is to teach them how to be good humans. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm teaching them how to be a good human. So it's part of being a mom for me.
Yeah, and what I want to do too is give all women just total room to say, there's no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist. It's a big myth. And we fall into this trap. You can have excellence, you can be your best, but something's there's just not enough time. There's not enough but we can do all these things, and it's going to be a little bit messy. But it can do really good, powerful things. And you can be powerful and get things done and love and live and never, ever be perfect. It's never been done.
100%. Now, something else that I was curious about, and maybe your dogs want to chime in on this one too. How important is it, now, correct me if I'm wrong, are you married?
I am married.
I thought I saw that in your bio. Okay, so how important is it to have a supportive spouse or partner when you're running for office? Because I know people that activism has created kind of a wedge in their relationship. It's, oh, you're doing something with the group again. Oh, you're out there at this march again. Don't we ever get a Saturday together? So how important is it to have a supportive spouse, and what would you say to someone whose spouse maybe isn't supportive, and you don't want to throw away a 30-year marriage, but what advice would you have for them?
I'm really glad you asked that question because I have strong feelings about this. It's incredibly important to have a supportive spouse for everything. I mean, that's what spouse is supposed to be, but marriages are also give and take, and I also don't believe in perfect marriages. I don't believe in perfect anything. So marriages can also be kind of messy, and I don't my husband is into the music scene and likes to go to concerts I hate, and for me it's like nails on chalkboard, and I don't participate in that. He doesn't expect me to, but like campaigning the first time, he went door to door with me every day for months and months and months for hours at a time, and he did it the one time. And then the next campaign, my second campaign for General Assembly came up, and this was a problem in our marriage because he doesn't like politics. He is a quiet person. If I go to a campaign event, I'm a people person. I'm working the room. I want to talk to everybody. And he gets stuck at a cocktail table, maybe drinking a beer, and I think in marriage, negotiation is really, really important, and we negotiated a deal, and that was, I have no expectation of you that you have to come to my stuff, and I won't get mad at you for not coming to my stuff. I won't get mad at you for not knocking on doors. You can't get mad at me for knocking on doors every night, and you can't get mad at me for going to all my community meetings and what have you. And as an added bonus, we agreed that he would provide dinner as long as, usually, it was a baked potato. And I can't complain, and he can't complain. It's like, that's what it is. So, if you're scrounging and it's cereal and that's what it is, but fine. And so what I would recommend to people is they find a way to make it work. And what deal can you make within your marriage to say, all right, if you do this and that for me, I'm going to make sure that I have a crock pot full of chili and I scratch your back in this way. You just find those negotiating points and those chips, those bargaining chips, and you make deals, and you're honest with each other about it. And if you get really pissed off, you've got to be clear. You can't just shove it down and pretend like it didn't happen. You say, hey, we had this deal and you're not honoring it. And, marriage is an ever-evolving thing, and my marriage is different today than it was 10 years ago or when we got married.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. We have in our house, it's a thing because my old man, he's a mechanic, and so he comes home irritated about car parts every day. And my dad was a mechanic. So just because I understand most of what you're talking about doesn't necessarily mean I want to have a 2-hour discussion about it. And we have a rule that at 7 p.m., no shop talk. So he doesn't get to talk about his work, and I don't get to talk about mine. That gives us an hour and a half-ish after we get home and things settled to talk about our day, but then that's it. It's just us and family time. We don't talk about work talk after this. And it's the only thing that has kept me sane, I think, in my house.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
But it works really good. So let's see, what other things? So we covered with a child. We covered a supportive spouse. Now, you also said that you're no stranger to multitasking, so parent, school, college. Did you have another career when you campaigned the first time? Were you going to work and then coming home and knocking on doors and then doing it all over again?
I was working for Kiwanis International, which is the global headquarters is in Indianapolis, and it's a service club that meets weekly. It's business people that do good things in their communities for children, and I was their chief communications officer. but at a certain point, I had to leave that because I was a Democrat running in a Republican district, and it was going to be a really tight race, and I didn't have a lot of money. So I knew I had to knock my way to victory, and that was going to take time. So that was another thing I had negotiated with my husband. So he got to go to law school, and I put him through law school, worked, you know, the whole time, full time. He got his degree. He started making more money than I did, and at one point I said, you know, like, the trade-off here is you're going to be the alpha career at some point, and I'm going to get to try to do this thing. And so I quit my job so that I could double down and get to 30,000 doors knocked, which in my district was possible because it's urban and compact. So I have one of the most urban compact districts in the state. So this might not be everyone's path to victory. You know, people who have rural districts over multiple counties might not be able to reach everybody like I did in person. But, you know, I found when I talked about the issues on a human level at people's doors, they responded. And I also found that was my greatest strength in being a legislator and representing people, was I was in contact and talking with the people. So, you know, it was a juggle for a while there, and then at a certain point, we did without a little extra gravy and vacations and that kind of thing, and I got to leave my job to focus on my race.
That's pretty amazing. I see how that would be an easy choice to make for someone that has the call to really serve their community. It definitely would not be a difficult choice to make. If that's what you have to do to win and be able to represent people, then it comes pretty easy. So so one thing you said there that really stuck with me is that you were a Democrat in a hard Republican district. So I also am in an area similar to that. And one thing that I have noticed around here is the Good Old Boys Club. Now, I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with this, but where I live, it's a network of generally men that will provide jobs, advice, information, connections, and kind of look the other way on negative behaviors because, well, he's a good guy. So and in here, locally, they control a lot of things, you know, so there's certain areas where it's very difficult for a female to break into, especially in very rural areas. So have you ran into any of that? Have you had any of the kind of good old boys style network kind of come down around you and not really receive you well, or has it been the opposite? Were you surprised and find that you were actually more accepted than you expected?
Actually, I've had both experiences, quite frankly. You know, sometimes being a woman is a real advantage because it kind of neutralizes a threat when you're at the door, when you're talking with people in a coffee shop or at the grocery store, at a community meeting. You know, it's you're not. There's just a more diplomatic angle to the conversation, I think, because people, well, if you're knocking on someone's door, they're not scared to see, you know, a man on the other side. But sometimes, you know, I think there are good old boys networks everywhere you go. I think within my party there can be a network, or, you know, the empowered elite, or, you know, if you're not part of that. I think one of the reasons why I had an easier time of it when I ran, and I didn't have to deal with the good old boys network so much, is because, well, my friend Carly Macer, representative from Speedway. She tells her story about how she was recruited for 2 years to run for her seat. And I was like scraped up at the last minute. Someone asked me at the last minute. Nobody wanted to run. Nobody thought it was winnable. They thought I was crazy. So it's kind of like people would pat me on the head and smirk, like, oh, yeah, you try that. Go for it, Christina, thinking, you know, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell, which kind of hurt, was kind of annoying, was kind of a struggle when it comes to, like, trying to convince people to write you checks and support. But on the other hand, it gives you a lot of freedom. I had a lot of freedom. Like, I didn't have to break into the club or elbow people out or have a primary. I didn't have a primary. Nobody wanted to run. They didn't think it was winnable. So that made my path a little bit easier because I was just like, you know what? I'm claiming it. And I think it's winnable if I work my ass off. And, you know, I got to work with smart people I know and people that help me. And KIP 2 is one of those. And people that said, okay, you know, show me the pathway to victory. How do we do it? You know, so it kind of cuts both ways. I think just because we're Democrats doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with cliques and clubs. We do.
Oh, absolutely.
And
well, that's human nature.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's human nature, and there are politics everywhere at every level. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I originally paid attention more to national politics, got involved in state politics, and then I really started paying attention to things locally, and I went, holy cow, nobody can keep track of all of this. You kind of have to pick one to really focus on. Find out which one matters to you and where you feel like you can be effective and learn everything about it, because learning everything about all of them, it's almost like it'll make your head explode. There's just so much.
That is a wise and important thought. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, there's just way too much to try and wrap your head around. I know people that are going after, you know, the resist movement and everything. It's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. To have this many people motivated all for one direct goal and really accomplish change, it makes my liberal heart bleed. But at the same time, I'm over here like, you're going to get burnt out. You need to pick something and really, really focus on it and make sure it's something that calls you and you feel a dedication to and a passion for, because if not, you're going to burn out. You're going to lose that drive.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of, once I was elected, I kind of I worked on a lot of things, but there were certain issues I was very passionate about, and I thought, you know, where's my power? Part of it is in, you know, in the overwhelming minority, it's in, like, the public. And if there are issues that in the public echo chamber, I could get them to care about, that maybe my legislators, my legislator colleagues on my side of the aisle, but also the other side of the aisle might care too if they see that their public cares. So leveraging all those tools in the toolbox can be really important.
Absolutely, all of those things. You know, there's a lot of reasons people decide to run or not run for office and things like that. And you hear the horror stories. You hear, oh, my family's name, this got thrown in the mud, this happened, or they found this stuff about me 20 years ago. But, you know, just to throw this out there, I'm 32. I was raised in the age of the internet before anybody knew what you should not do on the internet. So at some point, people are just going to have to be not scared of what someone finds out about them. And like you said, don't try to be perfect, but try to be honest, sincere, and effective.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of people that are, human, exactly, be human. There's a lot of, yes. So theoretically, these are the things I've heard from people, but you, in your position, knocking on 30,000 doors and being elected, being a legislator in our state, what are the top 2 barriers that women would say to you are reasons why they don't think they should or could run for office?
I think the first is time. And, we have so many priorities. We work, we raise children, we earn money, we cook food, we have to, keep the family's life together in so many ways. And so it's that question we talked about at the beginning of the call, like, I don't know why you get up and decide, like, instead of putting your feet up and watching House Hunters at 9 o'clock tonight, or Top Chef, or maybe you're reading Tolstoy. I don't know, like, what your thing is to relax. You're not relaxing. You're choosing to engage in a project much bigger than yourself. So I believe, like, you never run for an office, you run for an opportunity. And I also believe that you really have to live to, you have to align yourself with your heart. And sometimes it's important and right to put your feet up and watch House Hunters and get through life and recharge your batteries. And that's that era of your life. But I think what keeps us energized and young and engaged is, like, you're going to have many eras of your life. I didn't run for office for the first time until I turned 40. I had this kid at a really young age, so all my friends are out there having fun in their 20s and everything, and I'm, like, slogging it, But now I can go out and knock on doors with my adult son, and they're pushing strollers. Like, you don't have, you can have everything. You can't have everything all at once. Sometimes in life, it's that, like, you have problems in your relationship. Your child has problems. You have to answer these different calls that you hadn't planned for. You get sick. I mean, anything can happen. But sometimes, like, you just have that, like, it, you feel it in your heart and your mind. You're like, I can do this. I need to do something about that. Like, the universe is tapping me on the shoulder now. Like, absolutely not. Indiana, we have the worst infant mortality rate of any state in the nation when it comes to African American infants. I'm going to do something about that. That fires me up. I'm going to set my hair on fire. No, like, I've got to work on that now. East Chicago, what's happening with their drinking water and the contamination, and kids can't play in their in the dirt. Like, that's a problem. Like, addiction, income. There are 1,000 things. Like, maybe there's something because of your life experience or something that just pulls on your heart, and you think, like, no, like, this is my time. That's my issue. I'm doing this now. Or maybe the planets align and you just see that pathway forward, like, I have a little bit of extra money now. I'm going to support that candidate, or I'm going to start hosting this show on the internet to talk about these things that really make my blood boil and pump. I don't know, but, like, people, find your way. And maybe it's getting the word out, maybe it's running for office. I don't know what it is, but when that thing
there's something
in your heart, and you'll know when it's right. Like, you'll just kind of, like, have that, like, I know it's happening, and then run with it. It's
not to be confused with not being nervous about it. Knowing that it's something you can do and be effective at it does not mean you won't be nervous or have cold sweats or nightmares on occasion. That's not what that means.
You're right. And sometimes you fail. I just had a huge failure. I thought that's what I needed to do. It was what I needed to do. And every time I've run for office, I thought I might not win, but I can change the public conversation, and I can try to get people thinking about things in a way that's more productive. And in November, I lost my seat because I had to come off the ballot and lose what became, like, my safe, cool spot that I loved where I could do good things for people. I had to let that go to take a risk. And I took the risk, and we didn't make it to the finish line. So
Right.
we made it to the finish line, but we lost. So I was in shock, and I really believed, we were winning. We won every endorsement in the state. We raised more money than anyone ever had, and like we were having fun. There was no crazy campaign drama. It felt like winning, and then we didn't. So what was that all about? Well, I wouldn't take back a second of it, and it certainly contributed to who I am in this moment. Do I wish we won and we were positioned to help people like we plan to? Yes. Is it kind of like walking through fire and you get stronger and, more resolute to do good things? Yes. I mean, everything that's happened to me in life, good and bad, has made me who I am. And I remember when I had to tell my family I was a pregnant teenager, and both of my brothers told me, like, face it, Christy, you're always going to be a loser. And I believe, yeah. And I kind of believed it for a second, and then I'm like, no, I'm not going to be a loser. Like, absolutely not. I can't do it for me. I'm not going to do it for this kid. And then after a few years, I realized I'm not going to do it for my community. Like,
Right.
So it's like you just dust off, and I don't know where we're going. I did not expect this for our country. I didn't expect, this political reality that we have had since November. But I like some things. I like that so many people are more civically engaged. I like the fact that I got invited, like the week after the election, this guy called me. His name's Josh. He worked for the Daniels administration. He was a Republican. He worked for the Department of Health. I think he was on Governor Daniels' staff. And he got really fed up over equality issues, and he left government. He opened a bar in the Fountain Square neighborhood of Indianapolis called the Thunderbird. And he reached out. He's like, my clients are upset. They don't know what to do. Will you come talk to them? I was like, yeah, of course. And I get out there, and it's like packed bar, and as Democrats, we kind of, or as politicians, I'm sure it's the same for the Republicans, like you kind of know everybody. The faces are familiar when you go to these events and everything. Yeah. Here I knew like 5 people out of 300. Packed.
Oh, wow.
All these cool, hipstery type of like people, skewed younger, men and women. And I start talking to them, and I just said, so I got to ask, how many, you're upset, right? And they're all like, yeah, we don't know, we're upset. And then I was like, okay, how many of you voted? And I get like maybe 50 hands, being generous. And I was like, all right, shame on you, right? So the first thing we're all going to do is register to vote, I hope. And I was like, first of all, you've got to vote. Those are just table stakes. Like, this does matter, and every vote counts. And I only won from 51 votes out of 36,000 cast. So that percentage is like 0 point nothing when I first ran. Barely, yeah, like white knuckle time. But with these people, it's like you got to vote, but then like keep this up. They felt that tug on their heart, like, okay, now like being civically engaged. I think they realized that's important to them. That's important to their life and their community. So I feel like it was kind of the beginning of like their civic awakening and their discovery process that I hope they're still participating in. And like, honestly, I don't care what their politics are. I think we'll have healthier government that benefits more people and more people engage in it. So,
Exactly. I say that all the time. I don't care what party you are, where you're from, what real goals you have, because if you're honest and you're dedicated, it's going to be better than what we have half the time or more now. I just want honest, dedicated people that are running for office that feel that call. I I tell people all the time, I was never really religious. I'm more kind of spiritual, really into karma. But man, I never understood that call that people talk about with religion until I felt the call to serve. And that is just something that gets in your gut, and it never goes away. You can try to walk away from it, and you will lay there at night and think about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're
It
right.
just never goes away. So let's see. Now, we've done some, the whole idea is women in politics. So we've talked about a lot of things that women face and women struggle and women go through when running for office. But we do have a few things that are universal, not just to women, that I have some questions for you. So in our chat, people can drop questions if they have one regarding the evening and things that they would like you to answer. So I'm going to read this word for word so I don't miss anything because there's some numbers in here. Christina, this question is from Gina Robinson Unger. Gina is actually going to be hosting, she's going to be a guest panelist on our show on our next webinar session. So Gina's here tonight, and she has a question. What can you tell us about how much money is really needed to run for various offices? The local expert Democrats are telling me $2 million for Congress, $90,000 for sheriff, and $25,000 for county council. As a Bernie activist, I'm so much more attuned to small dollar internet fundraising and DIY door knocking. Is there a middle ground? How much would money be a barrier for someone who has less financial backup in their life to run for office?
That's a great question, Gina. And I think there's not one answer. I think it part of this answer depends on your geography and where you're running. I'm in the Indianapolis media market. This race I ran for General Assembly could cost a lot more, and did, than someone running in more rural Indiana. Now the advantage here is I can knock on more doors easier than they can because they're close together and compact. But my opponent could afford to go up on TV. And is that broadcast or is it cable? I think it's relative a lot of times to your media market and your paid advertising plan and those kinds of things. And you have to come up with a really good budget. You know, nobody ever won an office, at least I don't believe, because they had their logo on a bunch of nail files or, you know, different like tchotchkes that get given out. But, you know, there will be some unique attributes to running depending on where you're running usually. So I think budgets will be different depending on your media market especially. But then secondly, I think budget and sweat equity like depends on talent as well. So in my market here too, being urban, I can show up and have pop-up meetings at different coffee shops. I can, I'm a communication strategist professionally, so I can, you know, I was pretty good with social media and leveraging that. And in my market, that had appeal because it was urban. I think it's a little bit more difficult when you have districts that are over a broader geographical footprint or might be rural, say you're running for school board or a council in a smaller area. But then you know it's important. Like, you know, everybody's got to show up at the Junior League chicken dinner or, you know, whatever it is unique to where you live. But then there's also this opportunity with social media to go viral. And that can be kind of a magic thing. Sometimes you stumble upon something that just really works and clicks, and despite yourself, like, like that flying squirrel magic unicorn thing just happened in your, in your space, and you got to leverage it on social media, and you got known out there,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think of that kid that read Everybody Poops in the voice of Morgan Freeman. How many hits did he get on the internet? Like, what's that thing? I mean, you can get lucky, or if you know the right people, or you in particular can really strategize that, you can work it through volume, because you have this presence through volume, and you're really religious about posting, and you make it fun and cool, and you know what that next Snapchat thing is, and you get to the right demographic. You buy the right Facebook ads, and or just that magic lightning strikes, and you get that right thing. I always go back to like the Kennedy and Nixon debate when that was first on TV, and poli-sci majors will always say, that changed contemporary politics, because you had this sweaty, less attractive man, debating this perfectly suave, TV-ready guy, and what that all meant. There's a component of that too. I think a lot of that is unique to each race and to each candidate. So I guess my advice is find the smartest people who will be loyal to you, and be generous with their answers, and get their help, and trust your gut, because you probably know your community and your race better than anybody.
Yeah.
And know when you're just being a high maintenance, nervous candidate, and and then like listen when you need to listen to.
Right, absolutely. Constructive criticism, a lot of people anymore, if you take criticism, people are automatically offended or hurt by it. And constructive criticism is really, really important with this kind of thing, because it's all about how people view you. And if people are viewing you in a certain way, and they're telling you, hey, this is kind of how we see you when you do this or talk about this, and you don't heed that information, then what's the point of having people view you?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's definitely take the feedback that people give you. I like that you said, hopefully they will answer generously. I know if anybody's listening that I've contacted previously, I do occasionally have 1 or 53 questions about things. So definitely generous answers. So if it's someone that you think is going to be really, really busy all the time, or isn't going to be easily accessible to you, or doesn't get back to you anyway, maybe not the same person, even though you might really like them. So let's see. Now, Christina, we do have another question. Jamie Klein has asked, have you ever been harassed or hassled while campaigning? And if so, how did you handle it?
Have I ever been harassed or handled while campaigning? Absolutely, in a lot of different ways. I am I'm a stronger, more Teflon person for having campaigned, because all of a sudden you become government, and a lot of people don't like government, and they might even be people in your own party, but like all of a sudden you knock on their door and they're going to tell you about their sewer or curb problem, and they're going to vent their years of frustration at you just because they're a candidate for something and you've knocked on their door. But I've had everything from come on into my house, you're way too pretty to be a Democrat kind of weirdness, to I remember going door to door with my mother as a first-time candidate, and this grandfatherly, cute older gent is walking down the street with his cute little grandson. And so I always say hello. If anyone's in their yard, whether or not they're on my list or, walking along, I always say hi and introduce myself. And so I did, and he said, Republican or Democrat? And I said, well, I'm a Democrat. And he said, why don't you put your party on your sign? And I said, oh, well, because, this is about, like, getting the word about my name and my race and not so much about party. But that's my opponent's sign right there, and she doesn't have her party on her sign either. And he said, well, I want you to get down on your knees right now. I want you to get down on your knees and pray. I want you to pray. You are a bloody abortionist, and you have the souls of children, blah, blah, blah. And he's saying this not only to me, but my mother, and I was not prepared for that. Like, I'm just kind of thinking like, oh, what do I, like, this is what, my brain is in slow motion. It's not really reacting, it's not reacting in a way that, it just was a step or two behind, I guess is how I'll describe it.
Right.
But
yeah.
Anyhow, so my mother was right on top of it, and she said, sir, I'll pray. I'll pray for you. I'm going to pray for you right now because you seem to be very upset and angry, and I wish you peace. And I'm thinking like, oh, my God, I'm the politician, Mom, brilliant answer, but it like these little things will come up that you never expect. Like when I first announced at my job that I was running, this woman named Cassie, she'd always kind of seeked me out. There are, say, 150 people that work in this office, and she'd always stop by my office and say hey, and we were in different departments, but she just kind of felt comfortable talking to me about stuff and would come by and do a stop and chat. And, she didn't have a whole lot of friends, I would say, on staff, and she was a little bit of a outsider, and she kind of felt, I think, safe space talking to me. And so she comes by after the announcement at the staff meeting, and she says, I just want you to know, I think you're an honest person. I think you're a kind person. I think you're a smart person, but I could never vote for you. And it was like someone just, threw a dagger to my heart. And I was like, Kathy, why? And she said, well, you're a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican my whole life. I could never vote for you. I said, Kathy, but you know me, and you think I'm smart, kind, and, honest. Like, isn't that the kind of person you'd want to serve in office? She said, but you're a Democrat. And it was like the moment she identified me with party and being, a candidate for something, it dehumanized me, or I don't know what. I don't know what happened in her mind or heart. I guess I'll never know. But I wasn't ready for that rejection from somebody that I felt knew me, and liked me.
Yeah.
But it prepared me. And I was so glad it happened early in the campaign because I started thinking about it. It's one of those things you lie awake at night about, thinking about. And I was like, this isn't personal. Like, a lot of people's decisions and how they're going to react to me, it all has to do with what led them up to this point in their own lives and what's going on in their own head and heart. And I feel like it should be about me because I'm asking them to vote for me or against me. But you know what? So many times it's not about me, and it never will be. It's going to be about them. So that took some processing, but I think it made me a stronger person and candidate for having to go through that with people that you had expected to care about you or vote for you.
I mean, that's a really great thing to point out too, is that it's not personal, and that their lives up to this point are really going to indicate how they respond to you. Very few people are just comfortable with some stranger knocking on their door. So you're walking into their whole life when you knock on their door, and you just never know what you're going to get.
You're absolutely right.
I went knocking on doors out in the country in Franklin County, which is a very red, very rural area down here in the 6th District. And there was this one driveway, and we started to walk up the drive. And I'm not a huge believer in door lists in super gerrymandered areas because you almost can't win off of a list. So I'm a knock every door kind of person. So
Yeah,
I drove
sometimes
by
the
this
day's
house.
bad too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I drove and we start walking up, and there are like the signs on the windows that say trespassers will be shot or something, and it's got the actual little bullet holes in it. There's
Yeah.
little bullet hole stickers on the windows, and the woman I was walking with head out to everybody, please do never knock on doors alone, please. So I go and we're watching. She says, I mean, I don't really know about, maybe we should just like not knock on this one. And I was like, it's a door. So I knock on the door, and he was the nicest man, and we had the greatest conversation. And it's a door that I would have generally just a lot of people would have walked by, and it was pretty great. So I do love that idea. Now we have, let's see, it is a few minutes till 10, so we're coming up on the end of our hour-long discussion with Christina Hale. If you have a question that you'd like to have answered this evening or at a later time, if you want to answer tonight, if you could go ahead and drop it right now into the chat online, I'd love to get that answered for you. If not, I will happily take your email and try to get an answer for you. Now, Jamie she did respond to your answer, and she said, thank you so much for the response. She worries about that. Another question, if she may, are there any expectations or standards that you felt the bar was set higher for you than your male counterparts?
Was the bar set higher for me than my male counterparts? I imagine, if you're asking, does that mean was the degree of difficulty or expectation more rigorous? Yes. Or I think so. I mean, sometimes it's just challenging. When I was in the General Assembly, I worked a great deal on issues of sexual violence against people, and being a woman, I think, helped me have more critical conversations with people who would otherwise be resistant to those issues coming from a man, but it also made it more difficult. So for everyone, and I'll just say Republicans, for every Republican man that said to me, Christina, this happened to my daughter, thank you for doing this. Christina, this was my wife. Those like hidden allies that you wouldn't otherwise expect. There were also people, and sometimes within our own party, someone within our own party has said to me, Christina, these girls are lying.
Yeah.
So I guess I just use that as a lens to think through, like, there are all kinds of clubs that we belong to in life, and sometimes, I'm in the club of being in my political party. Sometimes I'm in the club of being, having my certain set of life experiences, or being Cuban American, or being a woman, and they always seem to cut both ways. Sometimes they open doors and make life easier, and sometimes it makes life more difficult.
So
I've
basically, you can't go. Yeah. You can't go with your hair all messed up, but you can have the hard conversations.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, you can say, like, I'm gonna wear my hair messed up. Like, you talked about how I wear sneakers, or, like, sometimes for me too, it's like, we're not our grandparents, just elected officials. Like, I will go to a meeting. I'm multitasking. So if it means I'm not going to get to run, if I don't go to this luncheon, or a breakfast meeting, I'm going to wear my running stuff so that I can do that, take a shower, get back to work, because that's how people my age.
That's real people, though.
Need to live. Yeah,
now, hold on. No, I don't mean to interrupt, but my producer is hounding me. We are at our time limit for tonight, and I was going to ask if you have just two minutes really quick. I have a question here that I would love for you to answer.
Sure.
The last question that came through was from Kristen I'm going to mess this up, McMurtry, possibly, McMurtry. And she says, many successful women are single parents. Can you speak to how I can support a single parent who has the gift and drive to lead? So if you get 2 minutes real quickly, how could someone listening now or someone that wants to help, maybe they don't want to run for office, but they know someone that would be really great, struggling with possible single parenthood, how can you help that person?
Well, single parents know how to hustle better than anybody and know how to multitask better than anybody. So, I generally find them to be really talented people and people that exploit their talents because they have to. They have to fulfill so many challenges in life. I thought it was really important to run for lieutenant governor because I wanted to be the first person in executive office and the state that has had to do that hustle of getting to daycare by 6 o'clock or get charged $20 a minute, for every minute I was late, or that had to multitask in these ways. And, as you said earlier, give your kid a hamburger so that you can host your show, make all this stuff work. So I have a huge affinity, having been one, a huge affinity for single parents because they're people that just get the job done, that can, make all those different components in their life work. Now, we don't always have the trust of others. I remember when I worked at the Department of Commerce years ago, everyone knew I was a single mom, and I showed up at Ball State for this training. It was like this economic development credentialing class, and a lot of my work colleagues were going, and my women friends, work colleagues, several of them said to me, "Oh, what did you do with Owen? Kind of like, how can you be here? Where's Owen?" And I wanted to say to them, I hid him in the effing closet. What do you mean? I took care of him. I'm here like you are, getting my little credentials sent by my job. Don't question me in the back end of what I've got to do because I get it done. And it might not always be pretty. Did I make him homemade cookies, and did I get the homemade chili in the crock pot? Maybe not, but he's taken care of, and that's my worry, not yours, and I'm solid, people. So those are people that I just really
so from what I'm hearing, yeah, not to cut you off, but my producer really is hounding me. From what I'm hearing, what you could probably do for a single parent is maybe help with childcare, or push the stroller while they're knocking on doors if needed.
They'll know what they need. Bring me a casserole.
Yeah.
Bring me childcare. Bring me money. Pay for my daycare. Maybe you can't watch my child, but maybe somebody else can, or maybe you can take my kids to a movie, or maybe because we don't always want to park our kids drooling in front of the Power Rangers. Maybe you're bringing them along with your family to the zoo, or there are a lot of different ways, and I think they're as unique as families are. But maybe I can't afford, because I'm investing in my campaign and myself, and I'm taking time away from work. Maybe I can't afford that Christmas present or the birthday present. Maybe they want to Tickle Me Elmo. I'm dating myself. Tickle Me Elmo or Buzz Lightyear or whatever, like today's hot toy is or something. It's going to, I think, be unique to the situation. People are going to know if they need a bus pass or new tires for their car. I don't know what it is. But,
those are all great ways to help out, not just a candidate, but any local single parent you can find. If you have the ability to give somebody new tires, I know a few that could use some tires. But
diapers,
all right, well,
like, and with no shame, like, hey, we're here about the greater projects. We want to do good in our community, and you're an important component of that, so I'm going to invest in you.
absolutely. All right. Well, Christina, I love you, and this has been an amazing conversation, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And if we have more questions come in, you can always email to them to 92counties@gmail.com, and we'll get an answer for you. And just thank you so much for being a part of this and taking out your time. So I'm
Thanks
so happy
for everyone
to have
listening. Yeah, if you're listening
Yes.
tonight, then I appreciate it.
Me too. All right. Well, I will let you go get to your family, and I will go get mine tucked into bed, and hopefully we will work together again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, Christina. Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Bye.